Everybody knows David killed Goliath, but most people do not realize what actually made David different. This was not just a story about a boy fighting a giant. This was a story about fear, faith, pressure, humiliation, and trusting God when everyone else froze. And once you understand what really happened, this story becomes even more powerful. For 40 days, an entire army stood frozen in fear. Every morning and every evening, a giant stepped forward and challenged Israel to send just one man to fight him. And every single time, no one moved. Then a shepherd boy arrived at the battlefield. He was not there as a soldier. He was not wearing armor. He was not trained like the warriors around him. But before this day was over, he would defeat the giant that terrified a nation. The story begins with war between the Philistines and the Israelites. The Philistines gathered their forces for battle and camped between Soko and Azekah at Ephes-Dammim. Saul and the Israelites gathered and camped in the valley of Elah. The armies stood facing each other on opposite hills, with the valley between them. Then out of the Philistine camp came their champion, Goliath of Gath. He was huge, intimidating, and covered in armor. He carried heavy weapons and looked completely unbeatable. But what made the moment even more intense was not just his size, it was his challenge. Goliath called out to Israel and demanded that they send one man to fight him. Instead of a full battle, he wanted representative combat. If Israel's man won, the Philistines would become Israel's subjects. But if Goliath won, Israel would serve the Philistines. When Saul and all Israel heard this, they were dismayed and terrified. And this did not happen once. For 40 days, every morning and every evening, Goliath stepped forward and gave the same challenge. For 40 days, fear ruled the battlefield. Now the story shifts to David. David was the son of Jesse, a man from Bethlehem. Jesse had 8 sons, and David was the youngest. His 3 oldest brothers had followed Saul to war, but David was still going back and forth between Saul's service and tending his father's sheep in Bethlehem. One day, Jesse sent David to the battlefield with roasted grain and bread for his brothers, along with cheese for their commander. He told David to check on his brothers and bring back news. So David arrived at the camp just as the army was going out to take its battle positions. He heard the shouting, he saw the tension, and then he watched as Goliath stepped out once again and made his challenge. The soldiers around David were terrified. They talked about the reward Saul had promised to whoever killed Goliath: wealth, the king's daughter in marriage, and exemption from taxes for his family. But David did not focus on the reward. Instead, he asked, essentially, who this Philistine thought he was to defy the armies of the living God. That is one of the most important moments in the story. Everyone else saw the giant through fear. David saw the giant through faith. When David kept asking questions, his oldest brother Eliab became angry. He accused David of pride and acting like he only came to watch the battle. But David did not back down. He kept speaking, and eventually his words were reported to Saul. So Saul sent for him. Picture that moment: a frightened king, a terrified army, a giant waiting outside, and standing there is a young shepherd offering to fight. David told Saul not to lose heart because of the Philistine. He said he would go and fight him. Saul answered the way almost anyone would have answered. He told David that he was not able to go against Goliath because he was only a young man, while Goliath had been a warrior from his youth. But David explained why he was ready. He told Saul that while tending his father's sheep, he had fought both lion and bear. When one of them carried off a sheep from the flock, David went after it, struck it, and rescued the sheep. If the animal turned on him, David seized it and killed it. Then David said something powerful. He said that the Lord who rescued him from the paw of the lion and the paw of the bear would rescue him from the hand of this Philistine. David's confidence was not rooted in himself. It was rooted in what God had already done for him. So Saul said, "Go, and the Lord be with you." Saul then tried to dress David in his own armor. He gave him a tunic, a coat of armor, a bronze helmet, and a sword. David put them on and tried to walk around, but he could not move comfortably in them because he was not used to them. So David took them off. This matters because David refused to fight in a way that was false to who he was. He would not step into battle pretending to be someone else. He would go forward with the tools and experience God had already given him. So David took his staff in his hand, chose 5 smooth stones from the stream, put them in the pouch of his shepherd's bag, and with his sling in his hand approached the Philistine. As David moved forward, Goliath looked him over and despised him. David was young, and to Goliath he looked unworthy of the moment. Goliath mocked him and asked if he was a dog that David came at him with sticks. Then he cursed David by his gods and threatened to give his flesh to the birds and the wild animals. But David answered with one of the strongest declarations in Scripture. He told Goliath, "You come against me with sword and spear and javelin, but I come against you in the name of the Lord Almighty, the God of the armies of Israel, whom you have defied." Then David said that the whole world would know that there is a God in Israel, and that all those gathered there would know that it is not by sword or spear that the Lord saves, for the battle is the Lord's. This is not mainly about self-confidence. This is about confidence in God. Then the moment came. As Goliath moved closer to attack him, David did something that still stands out. He ran quickly toward the battle line to meet him. He reached into his bag, took out a stone, slung it, and struck the Philistine on the forehead. The stone sank into Goliath's forehead, and he fell face down on the ground. The Bible makes it very clear. David triumphed over the Philistine with a sling and a stone. He struck down the Philistine and killed him, and there was no sword in David's hand. Then David ran and stood over Goliath, took hold of the Philistine's sword, drew it from the sheath, and killed him. When the Philistines saw that their hero was dead, they turned and ran. Then the men of Israel and Judah surged forward with a shout and pursued them. David did not deny the danger. He simply believed that God was greater than the danger. That is why this story still grips people today. Because everyone faces giants, but our Father in heaven will always triumph.